We're going to
Good
go
to go.
ahead and start our meeting. Welcome everyone to the September 19th, 2022 Park Advisory Committee meeting of the East Bay Regional Park District. It is 4:03 p.m. And Madam Secretary, if you would please call the roll.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. First up, we have Vice Chair Tsutsui.
Here.
Welcome. Member Arce. Member Arce not present. Member Carey.
Here.
Carey present. Member Chang.
Here.
Chang present. Member Claxton.
Here.
Claxton present. Member Corkin. Member Corkin not present, I believe. Member Deschambault.
Here.
Deschambault present. Member Dieter.
Here.
Dieter present. Member Espana.
Here.
Espana present. Member Lacey.
Here.
Lacey present. Member Mahadevan. Member Mahadevan not present, I believe. Member Nason.
Here.
Nason present. Member Rickard.
Here.
Rickard present. Member Robinson.
Here.
Robinson present. Member San Wong.
Here.
San Wong present. Member Simmons.
Here.
Simmons present. Member Skaradoff.
Here.
Skaradoff present. Member Williams. Member Williams not present, I believe. And Chair Obringer.
I am here. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
You are welcome. In addition to our committee members, we also have a number of Park District staff present tonight. We have Acting Assistant General Manager of Public Affairs, Ann Kassabaum. Welcome. Chief of Design and Construction, Lisa Gorgian. Chief of Planning, Trails, and GIS, Brian Holt. Welcome. Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Feeler. Principal Planner, Devin Reef. Welcome. Planner Edward Willis is present. Management Analyst Claire Griffing is present. Executive Assistant Sandra White is assisting in running the meeting along with myself. And staff from Prime Gov, Alex Gonzalez is also present. Joining us, we also have Board Member Dennis Waspy. And unless I have missed someone, that concludes roll call.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. I have an announcement as chair to share. The purpose of conducting this meeting, as described in this notice, is to provide the safest environment for staff and the public while allowing for public participation. Pursuant to the Brown Act, as amended by AB 361, the Board of Directors and staff may participate in the board meetings via phone, video conferencing, and/or through a hybrid of in-person and remote attendance. The East Bay Regional Park District, I'm going to refer to it going forward as Park District, intends to hold meetings through either an entirely virtual platform or a hybrid of in-person attendance with the Board of Directors, designated staff, and limited members of the public to participate in person at the Park District headquarters, 2950 Peralta Oaks Court, Oakland, California, and through the Park District's virtual platform, Zoom. The committee decides to hold a hybrid in-person meeting. Attendance by members of the public will be subject to maximum capacity of 5, as well as compliance with prudent health and safety protocols. And this information can be found on the agenda on the Park District website, ebparks.org. Do any committee members have any questions about the meeting procedures? Okay. Other than how long will we continue to do this? And I don't have an answer. So hearing none, we're going to proceed with the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our August 22nd meeting. And I know that there are usually questions raised about, are we going to go from action minutes to more detailed minutes? My understanding is that is still under review and consideration by the board. So I do not have an update to that. So these are still action minutes as of now. Are there any additional questions from committee members regarding the minutes? Irene, I see your physical hand raised.
Yeah, it looks like we have more than action minutes. They are actually real minutes, unless I'm reading something wrong. I was pleased to see a summation of what was said.
Okay, well, I do agree that they do look more robust than before. I don't know if there have been any changes. Maybe our director, member of the board, can share more with us whenever he addresses us. Thank you for pointing that out, Member Dieter. Anyone else? And or I would welcome a motion for approval.
I so move.
Thank you, Member Carey. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Member Scared-Off. Okay, thank you so much. There's a motion and a second. So Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll.
Absolutely, Chair Obringer. First is Vice Chair Tsutsui.
Aye.
Tsutsui, aye. Member Arce? Member Arce not present. Member Carey?
Aye.
Carey, aye. Member Chang?
Yes.
Chang, aye. Member Claxton?
Aye.
Claxton, aye. Member Corkin? Member Corkin not present. Member Deschambeau?
I, with a note, I sure hope we resolve this once and for all on what type of minutes this advisory board will give to the board electeds.
Thank you. Deschambeau, aye. Member Dieter?
Aye.
Dieter, aye. Member Espana?
Abstain. I was not in attendance at the last meeting.
Noted. Espana abstain. Member Lacy?
Aye.
Lacy, aye. Member Mahadevan? Mahadevan not present. Member Nason?
Aye.
Nason, aye. Member Rickard?
Aye.
Rickard, aye. Member Robinson?
Aye.
Robinson, aye. Member San Wong?
Yes.
San Wong, aye. Member Simmons?
Aye.
Simmons, aye. Member Scared-Off?
Aye.
Scared-Off, aye. Member Williams?
Aye.
Member Williams, aye. And Chair Obringer.
I am in support as well. So yes,
Obringer,
aye.
aye, and motion passes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on in our agenda, and it is my pleasure to introduce Board Member Dennis YSB for comments. So welcome, Board Member. We're glad to have you this evening.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my report. I just got out of a meeting with East Bay Mud Liaison, so I'm scattered around a little bit, but it's always a pleasure to be back here with all you folks. It's good to see some faces that I know, and as I should always preface everything, I appreciate your great work that you guys do, and you're really a great representatives of the district. So first off, I'd like to talk about an event we had last Saturday at Lake Chabot Park. It was the United Nations International Day of Peace, which the Park District has been celebrating very specifically and intentionally for the past 6 years. It's a great day well, it started off by the United Nations General Council in 1981 saying that they should take one day, stop wars, stop fighting, stop violence, stop aggression, and that would blossom into a world of peace. And it's been 43 years and we're not doing too well, are we? In fact, we're doing a lousy job, but we continue to forge ahead this year. And in the past couple of years, we've been collaborating with faith-based groups, and especially the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center. The youth that work there and are educated there and are learning things there have taken over emceeing the whole program. Youth speakers come in and talk about their experiences with peace and how to attain peace. It's an incredible, inspirational group of young people that are really really made it a great event. Secondly, I'd like to talk about tree mortality because that's one of the biggest things in my mind. I'm running for office this year, and people, as you know, if you're involved in that, you get asked a lot of questions by newspapers and organizations. They say, what are your top 3 priorities? I used to have lots of top 3 priorities in the old days, and they seem to move around in the Park District a lot. But boy, going to the right to the top was climate change and drought. I just can't get over the things we're facing, and specifically 1,500 acres. In mostly Anthony Chabot Park, but all the way going up to Tilden, 1,500 acres of dead or dying trees. It's an incredible threat to everyone on the urban interface. It has to be dealt with. We can't have standing dead trees. It's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. And we've started a pilot program. $2 million pilot program. So we've taken the Anthony Chabot gun range, which is no longer there, but it's a nice flat area. It's away from everything. So we're bringing in contractors and with scientists and educators and smart people to figure out what we're doing here, because it's amazing. I mean, we're going to have to cut down all the trees. We have to do something with the trees. We cannot haul them away. It's just environmentally crazy. They're big, big eucalyptus trees. In some cases, acacias, redwoods, and pines are dying. So we're going to try to, we bring in what's called a carbonator. And it would be a shipping container, the size of that. And it burns this fuel, the dead trees, at a rate and heat intensity that there's little off-gassing. It's a complete burn, and it creates what's called biochar, is the byproduct. It sequesters carbon, and we're told, and I forget how it was posed today, it's going to be the big question that we have. Many, many questions. People sell biochar at the Home Depot. We're going to produce biochar in such rates. We'd love to land apply it right where we're at, because that's the most environmental thing to do. But I think, and this is, nobody knows yet, but I think we're going to have 6 feet of biochar in every square foot of land in the Park District if we don't find a place for this. So it's a big experiment. It's a grand experiment. I look forward to it. It's starting. So I hope, we'll have lots of people looking at it, lots of smart people looking at it. Once again, the Park District will be a cutting edge. We've got over $8 million of grants from the state legislature to do these kind of programs. It's going to be the next best thing. And then, once we do clear cut some of these areas and the forest, and we take care of the problem and deal with the dead trees and deal with the biochar, then we have to deal with reforestation. And I see some of my colleagues here, they're going to say everything needs to come back in native plants. I tend to agree with that. But the devil's in the details, and that's going to be another big thing that we're going to be looking forward to as a big challenge for the Park District. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate our Lifeguard Services Department at the East Bay Regional Park District. Yesterday, they completed the swim season, and this is the 13th year that they've successfully run through programs, all of our programs with all of our lakes and all of our swim facilities. There has not been a drowning on an East Bay Regional Park lifeguarded facility in 13 years, and it's a tremendous credit to that department. So I'd like to congratulate them. And then finally, I'd like to congratulate Olivia Sanwong and John Mercurio, who's one of your fellow past PAC members. Congratulations on becoming board members. This seems like a good group of people. You learn a lot here. There's great work you do, and we give you great opportunities. It's a great internship, and it's a testament to your hard work, but it's also a testament to this group that no one decided to challenge somebody that was on the Park Advisory Committee. So thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to open it up to see if anyone has any questions for for board member YSB at this time? Okay, member Scaredoff.
Well, thank you for this great presentation. I've been a big fan of biochar for a really long time, and I know of its successful application on a much smaller scale, where you can basically, organic matter is composed mostly of hydrogen and carbon, and you burn off the hydrogen and leave the carbon behind, and you produce water. You can also generate electricity from the heat that's generated in this process. In the past, when we haven't been faced with such huge volumes of this stuff, it's been proposed as a very good soil amendment. And I don't know if that's intended to be one of the options you want to try to check out on that.
Well, yeah, thank you, Igor. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, we plan on doing that, but we need a lot of help. And boy, we really need the resource conservation districts to get involved. So I hope you stay involved.
Yay, we'll do that.
Great, great. We need all the help we can get.
Jeter, please.
Hi, speaking of, thank you, Dennis, for your presentation. It's exciting to hear that there's also a plan to plant trees with removing the dead ones. My question to you is in terms of procedure. Is there planting at the same time after you remove trees, or is that a whole separate thing that you do after? I mean, can you use some of that material over again if you were to plant trees at the same time?
Well, we do plan to land apply the biochar. What the landscape's going to look like is going to be anybody's guess. And I'm not going to suggest that I know. I know our fire department is collaborating with many different agencies. It's going to be, it's going to be the grand debate like everything else in the park district. Everyone will have an opinion. And everyone will have community meetings and try to figure it out. What's best is probably, I'd love to say what's best is going to be what we're going to do, but what's best is a lot of times the most expensive, and obviously funding is going to be a real big deal. But we're going to listen to the community like we do. We'll probably bring it, we'll obviously bring it before the pack. So we'll, I think it's a long process. It would be great to say that we have the plan in place to cut everything down, burn it up, produce biochar successfully, and then we've only got $2 million so far, or pardon me, the pilot's $2 million. We've got about 8 million. We're going to see how we're doing, see what's going to happen. But yeah, reforestation comes right behind it, because if in fact we need to clear cut, we don't want, then that'll be the year that it rains finally, and then we'll have all those issues of erosion and things like that. So we're going to try to do it. We're like shooting to the moon essentially right now. So we're trying to figure it out as we go. And I'm sure the fire department has a plan. I'm not up on it yet. I'm just excited about what's going on, and I can't wait to get up on the site to see the cutting down of the trees and the use of the carbonator.
And if I could just ask a quick follow-up question, I'm just curious in terms of with the extreme heat that we're having and planting trees. I know like in my own neighborhood, it's been a battle just to keep the trees alive. So how does that work in terms of if you're planting trees and there's not necessarily an irrigation system in the regional park? How do you, is there an intensive watering plan that goes on for a few years, or how does that work to make sure those trees take?
Well, when I worked for the Park District in my career there, which was 40 years ago, we did have the ability. We had water tenders. We had people that's job was to go out and plant redwood trees and then keep watering for the first 3 years till they establish themselves. I don't think we have the ability to do that at this point. We're going to have to do something, and I'm not sure what the plan is. Obviously, we're going to use drought-tolerant plants. Natives that don't need as much water. But then again, we're also not going to plant something that everybody agrees on, but that's going to burn down again. We really need to figure out not only the whole mosaic. I mean, if we plant these trees that are going to be grow to be a certain height, are we going to have ladder fuels underneath them that are going to just burn those and then story up into the trees? It's a big puzzle. Nature does a good job of it, but then again, nature also thinks that fire is a good thing. Unfortunately, where we're at in the urban interface, we're going to have to do some modification. I'm not sure what that is, but I know it's going to be very exciting.
Got it. Okay, I see Eric has his hand up and then followed by Bob Simmons.
Hi, I'm having some video issues, but I just wanted to add, Director Waspy, that our stewardship department has a ecologically sensitive vegetation management plan and budget in place. And the hope, to Casey Member Dieter's question, the hope is to sort of piggyback the tree mortality work with the ecologically sensitive vegetation management in the reforestation. And the goal there, and what we've been telling folks in the state legislature, is that if we can do them in sequence, it'll actually save us money, because we'll have our crews and our folks in on site all at the same time. And so that's been the discussion that we've had up in Sacramento. And there is $80 million in this year's budget for competitive grants for ecologically sensitive vegetation management. And because we already have a plan in place, I think we have a good opportunity to realize some of those funds.
Thank you. And then Member Simmons.
Yes, and Chair Obinger, I was really just going to respond to your question, because I've been planting acorns and buckeyes in Shell Ridge open space in Walnut Creek for almost 10 years. And I will just say that for the last few years, we have been taking a truck with water out there and 41-gallon jugs, and we have been watering about once a month just to get them through the season. And they're doing pretty well. It takes actually about 7 to 10 years for an oak tree to get tall enough or big enough that it can survive through the summer on its own. I just, it's a partial answer to your question. There's a whole lot more involved in the whole process of growing and protecting the young trees from deer and other critters. So it's a big process, as this has been discussed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't understand the full scope, but I know that, whenever these companies say, buy our product and we'll plant a tree, I think to myself, well, are you really going to make sure that the tree grows to maturity? Because there's a lot, I'm learning, there's a lot more to it than just planting and watering and saying, yay, we're done. Member Tsutsui.
Yeah, my comment sort of follows up on that a little bit. I love trees, and we all love trees, but there's a lot of really solid and a growing really solid data and a growing scientific consensus that grasslands are actually probably better mechanisms for storing carbon long-term, especially in places that are highly prone to wildfire, because grasslands store carbon underground in the root systems, whereas trees, of course, most of the carbon is stored above ground. And so, and we have lots of really wonderful grasslands in the East Bay Regional Parks. And so those are, I think a viable option, especially in terms of replacing eucalyptus forests as something that's much more environmentally friendly.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Board Member Waspy? Okay. And do we have any public comment? Okay, I don't see any physical or virtual hands. So I think we're going to close this item. Thank you very much, Board Member Waspy, for joining us today. And you're welcome to stay with us through the rest of the meeting if your schedule permits.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to roll into public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to make public comments related to items that are not on tonight's agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who would like to make public comment not related to an agenda item?
At this point, we do not have anyone wishing to make general public comment, Chair Oberger.
Thank you. And again, I'm scanning the meeting once more. Don't see anybody with a hand raised. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next agenda item. Give me a second, please. Okay, and so the next item, we have a presentation, item number 5. This is going to be, our first presentation is going to be by Eric Fueller, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs. And this is follow-up to our conversation from last month regarding the PAC role and procedures. And so there was some material that was sent out in advance for the group to review as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric, to guide us through this discussion.
Great, thank you. And can folks hear me? I'm hearing that maybe my audio is not coming in very well either.
We can hear you. It's a little faint, but I mean, it's audible.
Okay, I'll try to speak loudly and clearly. And I apologize for the video. I don't know what happened. It was working earlier today. So thank you for the opportunity to present again on our role and procedures. This is basically an overview presentation of what we've heard to date. And the goal or the hope is by the end of the meeting to have a definition of our role. And I'm open to some wordsmithing once we get towards the end, if it need be, that we would be able to take before the board for input. And the reason for that is that as we've been having these discussions, I'm learning that we have to kind of go piece by piece in terms of how to redefine the opportunities in the role of the PAC. I do think after we get through these slides, I do think that there's some themes that really do emerge, and I think it's pretty clear what the collective organizational view of the PAC's role is, and we'll be talking about that hopefully at the end of this conversation. Next slide, please. So our first slide is really somewhat of a clearly defining what Board PAC member Tsutsui discussed at our last meeting, in that, you know, the givens of the PAC and what is actually required of them. And we've identified these 5 elements as the PAC's responsibility to make recommendations to the board. And I think all of these, this group has participated in, and I think it's understood that the 5 asks here are something that we would absolutely continue to ask the PAC to continue to weigh in on. And you can read them for yourself, but pretty clearly budget and land use plans are of high priority for the PAC to review and weigh in. We may think about how we approach these items in the future, meaning instead of the budget coming at when it's ready to be presented as a recommendation, maybe having a preliminary discussion about it before it comes for the recommendation. So maybe have it come 2 times, or maybe have you know, ballot measure oversight come more than once. So we'll talk about that more in the future, but do recognize that even though there's these 5 elements, there may be some tweaking with those 5 elements that will be important as well. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the PAC, this is one of the questions we asked at our last meeting, and had also preliminarily sent as an email for folks to ponder. And I think, you know, we heard at the meeting from PAC member Dieter that it was clear that in her mind that this group is to advise the board, and that, you know, hearing about issues, while interesting and valuable, the true purpose is the advisory role. And then PAC member Nason highlighted the need to disseminate information to the community, as we wrote here, community, communicate with the community. And then I really valued and appreciated the comments by, well, I think it was by several of the PAC members about the Thorogood Marshall naming effort and how this body provided the community an additional avenue to provide input and add input to the board. Next slide, please. Uh-oh. Next, okay. So then the mission of the PAC, this was another question that we asked found in our findings, and the outcome of those findings really clearly identified, and the findings were from the interviews from back in November and December of last year, but the findings clearly identified 4 key elements of the PAC's mission: community guided input, community engagement, and this notion of value-centered topics, which means more items that are important to the community and to the geopolitical world around us that perhaps the Park District should be contemplating as part of their planning and policy development. So sort of things like, are we, what can we do to increase our greening of the Park District in terms of our environmental, disposal efforts in terms of recycling and reducing plastic and things like that. So some of those value-centered topics that may not be a direct policy at the moment, but that the Park District could benefit from community support. And then also, and I think Director Waspy, you'll appreciate this comment about, helping board members be engaged in not only in their community, but throughout their ward. And as we've noted, the wards are 4,000 people. So if I'm looking at future Director San Wong having the Tri-Valley and Fremont, those are 2 very different communities. So having PAC members that are representing perhaps Fremont to provide input if you live in the Tri-Valley and vice versa. So those were the 3 main topics that came out of the earlier findings. Next slide, please. And then we asked the question at our last meeting and before the last meeting, what is the value add of the PAC? So what is the board, what is the Park District getting out of the PAC's involvement? And I think it was PAC member Lacey that talked a lot about the broad-based community input, the opportunity to have experts in various fields providing various types of input from the community to the board and to staff that can prove very valuable as we continue to do our planning. And then also, I think it was PAC member Tasui that discussed the idea of taking on challenging issues. So, for example, the trail issue that is being worked on as we speak is one of those issues that the PAC can provide input and help provide guidance to the board as they take on a look at something that is more challenging to the overall community. And then also just this, again, idea of being external engagement and communicating with the community and advocacy. Next slide, please. And then also in our findings from the earlier discussions, we did highlight a few items where it was very clear that understanding what the board is expecting of the PAC is something that we need to get more clarity on. And then also the idea of what kind of input is more helpful. So perhaps prior to discussions or in the PAC packet, we can provide, or staff can provide some instruction in terms of what kind of input they're looking for and what would be most helpful. And then, providing informed public input on complicated issues, and also providing, again, an avenue to communicate with the community. Next slide, please. And then when we discussed with the board in our findings, we again finding that information sharing, communicating was highly important. that the PAC is not only a sounding board, but somewhat of a focus group for the Park District. In that they are an advisory entity, and they should consider the challenging issues as we've discussed before. And again, this notion of value-centered topics and having a broader community-based view of some of the more societal issues and geopolitical issues, as I said earlier. Next slide, please. And then finally, in our findings, we asked staff for what their objectives might be. And again, we land on this idea of community engagement. We discussed the idea of making sure we have PAC input before board consideration is heard, and that the group is again advisory and a research arm that can examine external, as we mentioned, with the value centered, but also, as we had a few months ago, our colleagues from Santa Clara Valley Open Space District and from Mid-Peninsula Open Space District discuss how their advisory committees are managed and run and functioning. More of those kinds of conversations from external entities with the PAC could provide valuable input. And again, the notion of community shows up in these conversations as well. Next slide, please. So after going through the findings and the conversation that we had at our last meeting, we did a little bit of a word exercise to see what really popped out. And the word bubble shows you sort of the words that came up the most, but I will give you actual numbers. Community comes up 11 times in the previous 6 slides that we've seen, and the notion of board comes up 7 times. So clearly, the idea that the PAC is there to provide community input and advice to the board are the very top 2 things that have reoccurred in all these various conversations. And again, there's some sort of subgroups in terms of PAC providing feedback prior to board consideration and advising the board that I would also kind of put into that nexus of community input for board decision-making. And then the last couple of items were the idea of the challenging issues that showed up 3 times, and then the valued centered topics came up a couple times. Next slide, please. So if we take that information in terms of community and input to the board, and we look at what currently has been written in the board operating guidelines, which ultimately is where some of the direction that we're working toward will be addressed. And I believe, and Director Waspy can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I believe that is on the docket probably for the next year, or it could take more than a year, but to re-examine the board operating guidelines. But again, we see the words, in this case, we see citizen, which I think may be not the appropriate word because we're really talking about community and residents of the community, and citizen has a different connotation in today's language. So providing community input into policy matters, and then providing community or having community involvement in a channel of public communication to the board. And that, again, that feedback loop where the PAC is helping to educate the public and then advising on subjects and making recommendations and comments. So it's not that far off from some of the things we've been hearing. So probably it's a little more tweaking and a little more clarity, but the elements are in the existing mission statement. Next slide, please. So where this information landed us, and this is where we are really hoping to see or receive additional feedback tonight with hopefully a recommendation of either one of these role statements or a variation of one of them to take before the boards, well, with general manager and deputy general manager review, but then to take before the board's executive committee for additional feedback and make sure that we're on the right track as we seek to sort of redefine the mission statement and the role statement. So what we've laid out here really is kind of what the status quo is, what I more or less just read from the existing board operating guidelines, kind of condense that to talk about providing community input and involvement as a channel of communication, and also making those recommendations as an advisory group. And then if we looked at the word bubble and took the frequent words in there, you know, I think the statement's something to the effect that reads here about providing community input and staff feedback to advise the board, and then also take on challenging issues and consider value-centered topics. So those are the elements that appeared in the, you know, the word bubble and the frequency of the words that showed up in the different findings that we've found. And then kind of to maybe put a bow on the two together and have a concise version, the words evaluating meaningful community input, advising the board about externally facing issues, projects, and policies impacting the district. That was the previous concise version, but thank you, PAC member Simmons, who submitted a even more concise version that we've added to this list to provide meaningful community perspectives to staff and the board on issues, projects, and policies of the district. So with those four proposed statements, we'd like to receive some feedback. And Chair Obringer, I know when we had an opportunity to discuss these that we thought it would be good to secure feedback, and then also really hoping to make a recommendation of some one of these elements or one very similar to one of these that we could continue to get external, you know, as the PAC asked in the past for more clarity from the board, giving them something to react to and providing more clarity. So with that, I think next slide is the thank you slide and questions. So I think I'll turn it over to you, Chair.
Great, thank you very much for that presentation. And so we'll start with questions and also if people have feedback. But let's start with questions. And if there are any questions, then we can get into the feedback. Yes, Member Dieter.
Hi, thank you, Eric. That was a really good summary from all of our meetings. I really appreciate the work that went into that. There is one little small issue that is going to that was forgotten about. Well, actually two things. My first question is, at one point, this group, the PAC, decided to have a subcommittee to work on this, and you sought for volunteers. And I don't know if I was the only one who volunteered, but if that's the case, is that why it got dropped, the idea of a subcommittee? And then secondly, one other request that we made was to come up with a formal process for the PAC to initiate on to initiate issues or policies or projects to get the approval of the board to work on. So those are the only thing, the formal process and what happened to the subcommittee idea. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Irene. I probably wasn't clear enough in the beginning. What our hope is to begin piece by piece the process of getting board input on all of these issues. And I don't believe that the idea of a subcommittee has been left out. I think we're trying to get to a pathway where we have something that we can get a reaction from the board, but then can continue to do the work. This is a fairly, as I'm discovering, a fairly large undertaking. And so I think, you know, step by step, we can get there. And then in terms of the formal process to initiate issues, that is still a consideration. There is a formal process now, and it's it's going before the board through the two executive committees, but having a more fluid process is certainly something that we can continue to examine. But I think just for the purposes of moving piece forward, just a definition of role is a good first step in terms of getting board reaction, and then we can come back to some of the other things, because as the chair has also identified, we also wanted to talk about adding youth members. There's also kind of discussion about the format of the agenda. So there's a lot of other pieces that are still needing to be looked at and moved forward.
So as follow-up to this, Eric, I'm just wondering, so, we really have just begun the conversation about, the role of the PAC. This is our, second major discussion about it. So at what point would you advise that the advisory committee be formed and start working on this?
I think if we can get some reaction from the board to address the original question of what are their expectations, I think once we get that reaction and some direction, and I'm betting would be supportive of the idea of a subcommittee, I think that would be a good time to look into establishing that.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw member Deschambault's hand, but it seems like it's no longer raised. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'll put it back out as a question. I really like this. I like the summary, the clarity, the community involvement is key, the evaluation's key, advice is key. I think where I get lost is we've got so much expertise on the PAC, and I feel like I'm still kind of a novice here. But what I really am still not seeing here that I've struggled with, and I don't know if others on this group have, and of course it particularly came up for me personally over the bikes, and I didn't understand my role because I didn't fully understand the mission of the park district overall when it came to things like conflict, when what prevails, preservation versus recreation, or is our goal to find a balance always between them? So I guess I don't know if that's a bigger picture or where that fits in, or if I'm the only one struggling with that here in my role, that I'm still not seeing in these definitions, although I'm liking the definitions. So I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but I guess maybe staff could help me figure out where that piece is going to come in to help me understand my role when there's conflict and clarity is needed on the role or the mission.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that, and I guess I don't have a comprehensive answer for you, but what I guess I would add potentially is that this is a forum for this group to provide perspectives on those types of I think you used the word conflict. I think I might rather say challenges, but having a robust conversation in this group is a good way to channel additional information to the board in different perspectives. And I think even, I think within this group, there won't be 100% agreement, but it'll be reflected that there was a discussion and the issues were considered. So that's my best answer for today, but that's clearly an overall driving issue for the park district that needs more consideration than what I am able to give in this meeting.
Thank you. Okay, looking to see if there's any other questions. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised regarding questions. So Eric, could you please remind us again, since we took questions, could you remind us, what you're specifically looking for feedback on at this time so we can focus that part of the conversation?
Yeah, really looking for a proposed role statement to be agreed upon by the group, or at least the majority of the group, to share with the board, well, share with the general manager and deputy general manager, and then also share with the board executive committee for additional clarification from the board.
Okay, so would it be helpful to put the, you had 4 statements or 4 on one of the last slides. Do you think it would be helpful to put that up? So we can all look at that and potentially vote to see, we can take them one by one and see if there's consensus around that. Before we do that, though, I think what I'd like to do is just see if there's any public comment. I do see the hand of a member of the public raised. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just take public comment on this, and then because I think we'll be, I think I'll do that, and then we can get into the selection. So Norman LaForce, you have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
Yeah, I've been involved with the Park District now for, dare I say, 40 years. And I think the Park Advisory Committee has a very important role to play. And that role needs to be productive in a way that generates good community input and comment on policy issues, recommendations concerning policy, and developing what people believe to be the community input. And I would say public or community input, as Eric has said, rather than citizen input, because we know there's lots of people who use the parks who would not be considered citizens in the strict meaning of the term, or as Rick DeSantis or Mr. Abbott, governor of Texas, would like to define it. And that's important. And what that means is, one, I think that the Park Advisory Committee needs to be engaged in an iterative process on policy and issues, particularly issues that are controversial. And it should be also going out to the community and in developing information from community groups and individuals and park users as to what are the issues in particular as to the related topic. And that needs to be done on an equitable, fair basis, going to all groups, be it off-leash dog advocates, be it us in Sierra Club, whatever. But that needs to be done in a more robust fashion. And I think that you all have a great role and potential to play in advising the park board and the various committees on that issue. And I have to say that in my years of experience with the Park District, that has not been the case overall. Maybe a few exceptions here and there. And I really appreciate this discussion and the proposals being made on this. And I would urge the Park Advisory Committee to really say, we want a very, very active role in policy recommendation, in community involvement, and generating an iterative process where we actually discuss the issues that the staff is bringing to us, rather than simply saying, okay, do you approve this plan that staff has approved or not? There needs to be a more iterative process from the Park Advisory Committee, and I welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then I'm just looking to see if there's any other members of the public who would like to weigh in on this item. All right, I'm looking for physical as well as virtual hands, and I do not see any. So I'm going to close the public comment at this time, and now we're going to bring it back. And so I would ask Eric if you'd be so kind as to share your screen so we can look at the 4 options. And I suggest we look, we start at number 1, see how many folks are in support of that, and work our way through and see if there's any tweaks that need to be made.
Hey, and Sandra, would you be able to pull up that last slide with the proposed role statements, please?
Yes, just give me one moment, Eric.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna go with, I think we'll take a look at the first one. So the first one is the status quo. And I'll just read it: to provide community input into policy matters, community involvement, and a channel of public communication to the board, to advise on subjects and make recommendations and comments. So that's pretty general, especially for, advise on subjects. So I'd like to see, is there a show of hands for folks that are generally supportive of this being the role statement, plus or minus a few tweaks. So maybe Madam Clerk, if you can help me see if there's a critical mass of folks. I need to change my view, I think, maybe, so I can see more people. Okay, that did not help. Okay, I don't think that did either. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm really not seeing a lot of hands going up for this one at all as I'm going through. Okay, so it doesn't look like anybody is a defender or passionate about this one. Okay. Oh, I do see Linda. I see your hand up.
I just have a couple words in here that I prefer. This is such a hard process, Madam Chair. I don't know how you're going to pull this off, but I like the word. I worked at EPA for 21 years, and we were very specific in using the word community involvement versus community input versus community perspective. So I like this one. That is key to me. And I must say, I really liked Norman LaForce's comment about active, because one of the things I find is we get a lot of presentations and we aren't active. But it's hard. So that's why I like that one, primarily because of that keyword in that one and the keyword of advise, which we lose again in item number 4.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And again, I think what would be helpful is, if you're passionate about this one, please let us know, as opposed to, because we can wordsmith all of these all day long. So what I took from that is, Linda, you like this one the best. And the reasons are the words community involvement together, as well as advise. And we should be trying to incorporate that into whatever our final choice is. Okay, Irene.
I just had a question for Eric. I'm wondering if you could take all 4 of these options to the board, because right now we're at the beginning stage anyway, according to what you said, and to find out which one they lean towards most. Since your entire presentation has all of our input, I would think that the board would want to see all of this. And that's my question.
It's an interesting question, and maybe worth exploring. If we could maybe go through the exercise of finding out what words are most important here to the group, and then maybe chair, if we want to have a conversation at the end to see if there's agreement on trying to present all 4, or 1 or 2 to the board for additional input. I think that might be worth having that conversation.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for bringing that up, Member Dieter. And so we will parking lot that until the end of the conversation. But in the meantime, if we could just go through and hear from people again, which statements they're most passionate about and, why or what words they would add to make it. So that way, I think that'll be good input for us for the end of the conversation. I see member Chang followed by member Skarda, followed by member Tsutsui.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to confirm. So the status quo in regards to that one, is that our current mission statement? Because I think that one is fine. My question is always like, how does me as a PAC member, am I able to bring up something that is not necessarily on the agenda? Like, how would I be, would I be able to do that? And if the status quo provides for that, I'm actually, I like that one. I think that one's fine, honestly.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And I think that we're still trying to identify what the process is for, bringing up an item for the full board to consider that wasn't part of their original work plan. So that's not included in this necessarily, but that's something that the PAC has expressed interest in doing. And so we hope to identify that as part of this process. Okay, member Skarda, followed by member Tsutsui, followed by member Robinson.
Okay, I can't see myself on the screen, so I don't know if I'm muted or not.
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. I like, in particular, the first sentence of the status quo proposal. I think that really captures what my understanding is of what we're about. To advise on subjects and make recommendations and comments is more like an implementation kind of a thing. I don't have any problem with it being there because it does tell you, how to proceed. But I like the broad scope of the first one. The other ones, I think, are a little bit less definitive, and I don't think they're as helpful in helping to guide us in our actions. So anyway, I like status quo.
Okay, thank you. Member Tsutsui, followed by member Robinson, followed by member Carey.
Great, thank you. And I'll try and keep this brief. I don't necessarily feel passionate about the status quo, but I do like it. In particular, I like that it has make recommendations and comments clearly enumerated, which is missing from the other ones.
Okay, that is concise. I appreciate that. Member Robinson, followed by member Carey.
Just one comment. The concise version, I think, would be my preference if it included something from the PAC member, because the PAC member generated one, which is not, it's kind of broader than just the board that we're giving it, comments to staff. And there are a number of ways that we provide input for the park district, whether that's from our own knowledge bases or whether it's from community input. So I would like to see that. I would support the concise version if we could combine that one and the PAC number one. So we're looking at the full role of the PAC and providing information for the park district.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And what we're trying to do right now is focus. We're going to take each one. So I appreciate you weighed in about concise version. We're trying to focus the comments right now on status quo, and then we'll move to frequent words and then concise version, and then from a PAC member, if that's okay. So member Carey, and then I thought I saw somebody else. Go ahead.
Sure. I actually like the wording of status quo. The only thing I don't like about it is the inability of PAC members to easily add items to discussion. So there's sort of a passive role. I'd like to see a little more activity in it. That's all I have to say on this one.
Okay, thank you. Member Rickard.
Yes, thank you. Kind of piggybacking on what Igor said about the status quo, the first sentence to me, it makes a lot of sense. The second sentence is a little bit vague, and I'd actually suggest that Bob Simmons' version might be added as the second sentence to status quo to better define that the community perspectives and how we relate to the staff and board.
Okay, thank you. And Member Scardoff, I see your hand is up again. Did you have something additional to share?
Well, actually, I just neglected to lower it, but I would just agree with the last comment that if you take the second part of status quo and place the from the PAC member part in there, I like that combination.
Thank you. Member Espana.
As I look at it more, for me, it's between status quo and the concise version. But the one thing that status quo has is to make recommendations. And I mean, community input is something where you can listen to, but it's not something where you necessarily make a recommendation. It's just something you hear, and a group will report back that they heard you. So I think that make recommendation is strong. And that was kind of why I'm settling more on status quo, because there's that active part. There are some things that I really like about the concise version. When we get there, I'll mention what I like about that statement.
Thank you. Okay, Member Dieter.
As I study these, I think status quo has some good words in there. First of all, it uses the word advise, which is what I think our role is, and to provide input. I have a problem with the word meaningful because it's very subjective and judgmental. So that's the only thing I would say that I do not like, but I do like the active form of the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I've heard quite a bit of positive support for the status quo as long as it is modified. And the modification that I heard was to add the statement, the one sentence from a PAC member. So I heard one member suggesting that. I also heard another member say that the word meaningful was too subjective. So anything else before we move on to frequent words? Yes, Member Simmons.
Hi, just a couple thoughts since I was the one that crafted the fourth one. I had trouble even leaving meaningful in there, so I kind of agree with that because I kind of wanted to get away from adjectives, but I left it in there. I don't like the word input at all because I think that's very bureaucratic sounding. And so I came up with perspectives. I have no trouble whatsoever, though, adding the words to provide community perspectives and advice to staff and the board, because I think the comments about advice make sense. And finally, one is just as a drafting point, when I like to draft things, which I did a long time ago, on this type of thing, I like to stay away from two sentences. I like to have a simple, direct, complete sentence. And, I was, with that caveat, I was actually pretty much okay with a couple of the versions that were out there. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And so maybe Eric, if you could help me keep track. Oh, I think I just saw some more hands. Oh, I saw a thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you. Sometimes it's hard to tell if it's a hand or a thumb or what it is. Okay, perfect. Thank you all very much. Okay, so let's move on to frequent words. And again, what we're trying to do here is establish the level of support for each of these. So, I'm under the assumption that, if you were really passionate about the or at least if status quo was your number one choice, that you have spoken. Some folks did say they were torn between status quo and something else. So if you could just let us know, or I invite you to speak if you feel strongly about frequent words being the rule statement for this group. So is there anyone who's an advocate for frequent words, community input, to provide staff feedback on items advancing to the board, to advise the board, take on challenging issues, and consider value-centered topics? Okay, so I'm looking to see if there's any hands up for this one. Again, it's a little hard for me to see. So I'm coming through the group here. Okay, so I do, okay, I see some hands. So Member Dieter followed by Member Scaredoff. Member Dieter, you're on mute.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this if we want to get to the next subject matter, but I just think the important words are advise, policy, challenging issues. Those are my three favorite. Thanks.
Thank you. And so 2 of those words are already in the status quo. So I think the only word that's missing from status quo is challenging. Thank you. Okay, Member Scaredoff.
I'm pretty lukewarm about this one. I think that it's more of a passive role where we're just providing some feedback on things that are brought to us. We don't initiate, it doesn't say where we're initiating anything, I don't think. Well, maybe take on challenging issues might be initiating, but on the whole, I find it to be a little bit too soft and not active or action oriented.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so I'm not seeing a lot of fans for this one, to be honest with you. So I think with the exception, we heard that one of the redeeming qualities is the word challenging. So we will take that with us to our last part of our discussion. All right, I'm moving on to the concise version: to evaluate meaningful community input and advise the East Bay Regional Park District Board of Directors about externally facing issues, projects, and policies impacting the Park District. Okay, Member Espana. And you are muted.
Sorry. What I liked about the concise version is the word evaluate, because it was more active as far as what a role is in the board. Meaningful, I didn't like that word, because as far as community input is community input, and it doesn't necessarily have that value if it's meaningful or not. It's what people are feeling or how they see the issues. And then externally, there might be issues that might not just be purely externally facing issues. So I felt like that might limit discussion or feedback and narrow the issues that you could discuss. I did like as far as that it was one sentence. So that makes it easier to understand or for people to grasp. So those are my comments for this one.
Thank you. Member Carey.
I'm not a big fan of this one. It's a change in a lot of the functions. It turns us into a filter between our community. And that means that my judgment will be used to determine community input. And I don't really like that idea. I think I should be providing input from the community, whether or not it is, in my opinion, meaningful. That's my real concern about this one.
Okay, thank you. Member Robinson.
So I like this one, but I do understand the comment on the word meaningful. And I've always seen the PAC as a conduit between the public, because there's a number of us, more so than the board, and we have more opportunities to engage with the public and get out there. And I think that serving as another component of feedback from the public to the board and to staff and on issues has always been a part of our role as I see it. But again, I would like this one, if it were broadened a bit, to be more than just board of directors, which is what it seems like in this concise version. Just something more like incorporating Bob Simmons' comments or the version that he put together, looking at staff and issues, projects, and policies. I think, and externally facing, I think that could go as well, and just about issues, projects, and policies impacting the Park District would work there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm just looking to see if there's any more feedback regarding this one. All right, and we've already heard a little bit about Member Simmons' proposal to provide meaningful community perspectives to staff and to the board on the issues, projects, and policies of the district. And so one of the proposals was to add this sentence to the status quo. Are there other thoughts on this one? Anybody who really thinks this should be our proposed or our rule statement? All right. Okay. Well, Member Simmons, followed by Member Nason, followed by Member Claxton.
So I have the advantage of listening to people talk about the other ones, and for purposes of commenting on this one, I would drop the word meaningful and I would add the words after perspectives and advice to staff, so that it encompasses both the advised comment, that I think is a important comment, and deleting the word meaningful, which I think is problematic.
Okay, thank you for that friendly amendment there. Member Nason?
I like this one the best because to me it is truly concise and well constructed. I'm not the community input versus community perspectives. I'm not sure what that signals to others, but to me, perspectives is a broader term, and I think someone made the comment that input has something of a procedural or bureaucratic kind of tone to it. So I like community perspectives. I agree with dropping meaningful. But I think it's also really important to have in here that we are providing perspectives to the staff as well as to the board, because I think part of the value of the PAC is for the staff to gather some community perspective before they finalize something that, as they're working on things that are ultimately going to become policy recommendations or project recommendations or, issue analyses that go up to the board. I think that kind of early input from the PAC could be valuable to the staff and therefore valuable to the process as a whole. So this is the one that I like, as with the edits suggested by the author.
Thank you, Member Claxton.
Hi. Well, I kind of have a different take on it. I like the statement that we talked about earlier about taking all of these to the board to see what they think. I feel like the direction for our work comes from the board, is supposed to come from the board. So I think I like status quo best, because I think that did come from the board, from what I understand. I like Bob Simmons, the concise
version or the PAC member version because it is concise. It's one sentence. Sure, take out meaningful because that's too much of an adjective and we're deciding what's meaningful and what isn't. So we don't want to be that filter. But a lot of what I want to know, and advising is fine, adding the word advise in there somewhere. But but I want to know more about the how, because I think it was Member Robinson said, you know, we're a wide body and maybe we get perspectives from all over, whereas our ward director gets maybe from their ward. But my director has been had a long career and he's all over the place. He knows so much more than I think any one of us do. So I would like the directors to give us the direction of what they need input on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's something I think that's come up where different directors have different, you know, every director has different experience, right? Just like every PAC member is different. And so I think that's been one of the challenges is figuring out how to utilize the expertise, right, in the best way, right? Because again, it's not clear across the board. So there could be cases where a PAC member is out and about more than the director for whatever reason, or has more expertise. So it's kind of it's tricky to try to define that. Member Skardoff, followed by Member Robinson. You're muted. You're muted. And you are still muted, unfortunately. So maybe we'll go to Member Robinson.
There it is.
There you go.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No worries.
I apologize. It was way in the left-hand corner down below. I'm just saying that I'm starting to like number 4 more and more, especially as it's being fine-tuned here. And so only thing I'm having a little bit of a quandary with is the word perspectives. I understand not wanting to use input, and I'm struggling to find some alternative to perspectives. So I'm kind of willing to be okay with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Member Robinson, followed by Member Lacey.
I agree with Igor. This one is kind of evolving to something that I can really support. Just wanted to clarify when it comes to the feedback that just kind of, as Chair Obringer said, that this is a two-way street. It's when it comes to collecting information from the public, because it comes at this body and the board of directors in a number of ways. And the more we communicate about what we're hearing and what we found and what we've learned with each other, the better we will be as a body and they will be as a board. So that just that as much interaction as we can have with the public and funneling that information. And it depends on if you were appointed by a director or if you were appointed by another body, because I know those of us that were appointed by directors, part of that role is communicating what's happening here with the PAC, with the person that has appointed you. So it's also something to keep in mind that we're not all here in the same fashion.
Member Lacey, and this one was my favorite, and I like the edits. I do like the word perspectives instead of necessarily input, because I think, you know, part of our role is to gather the input and kind of distill it into maybe somewhat some of the issues are, and providing that to staff. And, you know, in looking at the different things from, you know, stewardship versus recreation and all of those different, and provide the staff and the board with all the perspectives on that. You know, and so because, you know, sometimes we might not, you know, come to an actual, you know, we recommend this, but hey, we recommend you considering, you know, all of these things when you're developing a policy. So I like this one, and I like the edits. So
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm looking to see. I keep having all different kinds of views, but it's not giving me the option, which I really want us to see everybody. Okay. Yes. Okay. So Eric, you have heard our feedback, and you have your hand raised. So would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Great feedback. Really appreciate it. I think where we might be landing, and this is a suggestion, and I understand the timeliness to try to move on, and we have another item that needs a recommendation tonight. But what I might propose to the group is that we share the status quo, concise version, and from a PAC member, share those three with the board. I did not hear a lot of input on our support for frequent words. Take out the word meaningful from the two, from the concise version and from PAC member. And then in our conversation with the board executive committee and with the general manager, making it clear that the idea of challenging issues and inserting perhaps the word evaluate into what this PAC is doing, making clear that those are two words that with whatever version would like to be added. I think we'll get significant. I did wordsmith a version that might incorporate everything, but I almost think that might be, we might be better off getting reactions to the three. And I've taken good notes. I think Claire has taken notes. I think Flora has taken notes. So we can provide a good summary of this conversation to the board. And that would be in my sense. And then I see Bob wants to add in and advice after perspective. So that's happy to do that. So with that amendment and with the idea of removing the word meaningful and the three versions, I would propose that the PAC recommend moving those three forward with the edits to the bottom two that have been discussed.
Thank you, Eric. I think that sounds good. And I do just want to, ask that you do share with the board. There was a lot of emphasis, and I agree with this as well. You know, we would like to better understand what is the pathway to make recommendations and to advise on subjects that are not, not necessarily on the work program. And so, I don't know that the board is going to come up with the process necessarily through this conversation around the proposed rule statements, but if you could just communicate that is a particular area of interest for this group.
Yeah, and I think you just nailed it there. I view that as a process issue more than a role issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we can express it, but I think it's a separate, I think it has to be dealt with in a separate manner.
Yes, and that might be some developing that process. I think would be work of the ad hoc committee that we talked about earlier. Kind of hammering that out and then bringing it back to this board or this body and the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Sandra, if you could please take this down so we can see each other again. I appreciate you putting it up in the first place. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. I know that some of this can be tedious at times. So thank you for that. And we're going to close this item. We're going to move on to the next presentation item that is item 5B on Rowdy Ranch Golf Course Habitat Restoration and Public Access Plan. And we're going to hear from Planner Edward Willis.
Chair?
Oh, yes.
Was it recommended?
Oh, is there a motion we need to take for your proposal? I'm sorry, do we need to officially vote?
If we can quickly, yes.
Okay, okay, sure. Could you please, I don't know if I heard a motion necessarily. I heard your proposal, Eric, that you were going to present proposed rule statements 1, 3, and 4, and receive feedback from the board on those. So did I understand correctly that that is what was being proposed and asked for support from the PAC on?
Correct, and removing the word meaningful from 3 and 4, and then adding the word advice after perspectives in 4.
Okay, thank you. So that is a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Well, Eric can't move.
Yeah.
He's a staff member. So,
Yes,
so that's the motion. I will move the motion.
okay, thank you.
I will
Thank
second
you
it.
very much. Okay.
I will
I'm
second.
sorry. Okay, so we have a motion by member Lacy and a second by member Carey. And Madam Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Absolutely, Chair. Vice Chair Tsutsui.
Aye.
Tsutsui, aye. Member Arce?
Yes.
Arce, aye. Member Carey?
Aye.
Carey, aye. Member Chang?
Can you come back to me, please?
Yes, Member Chang. Member Carey? I'm sorry, Member Claxton?
Yes. Aye.
Claxton, aye. Member Corkin? Member Corkin, not present. Member Deschambeau?
Yes.
Deschambeau, aye. Member Dieter?
Aye.
Dieter, aye. Member Espana?
Aye.
Espana, aye. Member Lacy?
Aye.
Lacy, aye. Member Mahadevan, not present. Member Nason?
Aye.
Nason, aye. Member Rickard?
Aye.
Rickard, aye. Member Robinson?
Aye.
Robinson, aye. Member San Wong?
Yes.
San Wong, aye. Member Simmons?
Aye.
Simmons, aye. Member Skardoff?
Aye.
Skardoff, aye. Member Williams? Member Williams not present, I believe. And before we go to Chair Obringer, Member Chang?
Yes, please.
Chair Chang, aye. And Chair Obringer?
Yes.
Obringer, aye. Motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, now we get to go on to our next presentation item for this evening. Item 5B, this is going to be presented by Planner Edward Willis. This is the Roddy Ranch Golf Course Habitat Restoration and Public Access Plan.
All right, thank you, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Eddie Willis, planner, really excited to bring this item before you. It is a project that our planning team has been working on for the last couple of years, basically since the start of COVID, and we're really excited to move this plan forward and look for a recommendation to bring it to our full board. We are joined by the East Contra Costa County Habitat, Conservancy Director, Abby Fateman. And Abby, if you're on the call, if you want to say a few opening words, or we can come back to you. But while we get that going, I'm going to pull up my screen.
Sure, this is Abby. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I see General Head on. Hi, great to see everyone again. My name is Abby Bateman. I'm the Executive Director of the East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy. We partner with East Bay Regional Park District on land acquisition, land management, habitat restoration, and science. We've been in this partnership for over 15 years and have successfully acquired close to 14,000 acres of land together, completed about 11 small and large restoration projects to benefit special status species in the East County region. And we are very excited about the Roddy Ranch Golf Course acquisition and the planning for recreation and restoration out there. And I'm happy to be here to support Eddie and other East Bay Regional Park District staff as we talk to you about this. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here tonight.
All right, so we've got quite a bit to cover, but hopefully I'll be able to breeze through this quickly. Just a quick check-in. Can you all see my shared screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. All right, just want to acknowledge our funding and project partners on this with Abby from the Conservancy, Restoration Design Group is our lead consultants, and other regulatory agencies been involved. It's primarily a partnership between the Park District and the Conservancy. The former Roddy Ranch Golf Course is located at the southern edge of the city of Antioch on the Brentwood border, immediately south and east of Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve and part of the larger future Deer Valley Regional Park, close to the intersection of Deer Valley Road and Balfour in East County. It, in turn, is part of a larger network of conservancy lands. As Abby mentioned, there are about 14,000 acres currently under the Habitat Conservancy system, and that may grow to upwards of 30,000 acres in future years, in the coming decades. But Roddy Ranch is sort of near the geographic center of that preserve system. All right, a little bit of background on the conservancy lands. It's primarily focused on habitat restoration, and where appropriate, we can allow passive recreation, hiking, mountain bikes, equestrian, potentially dogs on leash, as long as it doesn't conflict with any special status species. We have a limited number of staging areas we can build, and then upwards of 50 acres of recreational improvements. A little history on the site itself is it was once owned by the Roddys that lived in Deer Valley, which is a geographic feature in East County, just south of the golf course. And the Roddys sold much of the land to the Park District in the Conservancy in the in the 2000s, in this century. And the golf course was operated up until 2016 when it closed and was acquired by the Park District in 2018. And within a couple of years, we began planning efforts to eventually open it as a new regional park. Just some historical ecology of the area. This is the earliest aerial image we have of the former golf course back in the 1930s. You can see it's part of a large open grassland system, much of what covered the Central Valley and the interior Coast Range historically. And just wanted to throw this in there for some perspective. At the top of the photo, that bend in the road is Empire Mine Road. You'll see that in maps later on in the presentation. Here we are in the planning process. We're nearing the end of a long and robust planning process. Began in 2020 with field studies compiled into an existing conditions report, which we reported to the public in the spring of last year. That information was developed in the draft concepts, eventually a preferred concept, and environmental analysis, or CEQA. And we are nearing the final stage of the formal planning process, which is to recommend and adopt a habitat restoration and public access plan for the golf course. We have been guided by these project goals. I won't go through these in detail, but essentially one of the main restoration goals is to restore grassland and wetland habitat on site. And on the recreation side, it's to open it to public access of passive recreation and make future connections to other nearby regional parks. We'll play a short drone footage video, about 40 seconds, which will give you a lay of the land. You can see it's a fairly open landscape with existing cart paths, sort of an open sort of grassland savanna landscape. This is looking east toward Brentwood and Antioch and the Central Valley. This is heading east over the center of the golf course toward the parking lot, which will be the future staging area. In the left, there's a redwood deck, which used to be the clubhouse that can be turned into an interpretive pavilion. And finally, rising and looking south toward Mount Diablo and Deer Valley proper. All right, so the three design concepts are perspective view on the map here, or on the video screen here. Some of the common restoration features are listed, as well as public access features. And so this was presented to the public last year. We got some good feedback and had some robust conversations with folks representing equestrians, mountain bikers, conservationists. And we took this information from the public, from project staff, elected officials, as well as regulatory agencies, and distilled that information down into a preferred concept, which is expressed as a map showing recreation and restoration features. And then from that, the Habitat Restoration Public Access Plan is essentially a narrative of that preferred concept map. So it's really fleshing out the details of where public access will go, where restoration can take place, and so forth. This is a perspective or bird's eye view looking over the golf course. The parking lot or staging areas at the bottom center. The dash lines represent accessible trails that will be appropriate for folks of all abilities, and the solid lines indicate multi-use trails or natural surface trails. And the green or the blue areas are restoration aquatic features. Okay, the preferred concept map is a plan view. So the perspective was looking toward the west to the left. Dash lines again are accessible trails. That's about 1.6 miles proposed here. Some viewing areas, these little, these black circles with the arrows pointing show the direction of the views. Multi-use trails, solid, and then the blue show water channels and areas of restoration. And we were very careful in the design to make sure that the trails were pulled up away just at least far enough from these wetland features that we're not intruding on that 300-foot buffer, which is one of the requirements in the habitat conservation system. So we'll move on to some renderings from the plan. So this is floating above that overlook off the accessible loop, looking southwest toward Diablo. This is the artist rendering. And then this is what it looks like currently. We have another view of the staging area, which would be off to the right, the interpretive pavilion in the center with the red roof and the accessible loop system in the foreground. So that's, this is the imagining or the rendering, and this is what it looks like currently. The golf cart that is coming toward the camera doesn't meet accessibility requirements, so that's why it's shifted over as you see here. And just for perspective, the most of the golf cart paths on site are about 8 feet in width. A concept for the interpretive pavilion is shown here from a couple angles. It could provide some shade on site, some displays, areas for groups to gather and contemplate the landscape. All right, the plan itself, go through some of these bullet points quickly here. It is necessary to have a plan in place to open this as a regional park. It is focused on grassland and wetland habitat and opening up the landscape with the removal of many of the concrete golf cart paths, many of which are in disrepair. Importantly, the recreation that's proposed conforms to the Habitat Conservation Plan or natural, I forget what the acronym means. Abby knows, the Natural Community Conservation Plan,
Community Conservation Plan. Yeah,
you got it. Yep, it was coming to me. So we're proposing multi-use trails on site, staging area, including a picnic area, restrooms, interpretive pavilion. And the Park District is one of 4 agencies that needs to approve or sign off on the plan. It also needs to be approved by the Habitat Conservancy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we've been partnering with them all along to make sure we're all on the same page, and we're moving in that direction. Some of the milestones that we have achieved are on screen. The ones in bold are the public facing events. We had a couple of online public meetings last year, as well as a couple of on-site in-person public events, September of last year and May of this year. And we're at the stage where we're moving forward with bringing this through the adoption sequence. We took it to the Board Executive Committee a couple of weeks ago. We're here with you now at the PAC, and then tentatively bringing it to the full Board of Directors in early November. Questions, comments? I'm happy, or anyone on our team, I'm sure would be happy to answer any questions, respond to any comments, and I will pull down the shared screen if I can find, there it is. Okay.
Very much
Thank
for
you very
your
much.
presentation. I do see some hands. So we'll start with Member Dieter.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just have a clarifying question here. Is there anything different in this plan than the last time it came before the PAC?
That's a great question. And I'm trying to recall the last time we brought it to you. I'm not sure if that was the draft concepts, the 3 maps, or the final preferred concept. If it was the final preferred concept, this is essentially the same plan that we presented late last year with the trail alignments and the restoration features. What we didn't have at that time was a fleshed out plan itself, which is about an 80-page document that was attached to the this meeting in the staff report. And so we wanted to make sure we had buy-off from the various groups on the concept plan before we started fleshing it out. So I don't know if that answered your question, but this is the late last year we presented the concept plan. It's essentially the same plan we have in the plan today.
Well, the reason why I ask is at the last time that it was brought before us, we offered feedback and what we'd like to see different in there. So it seems like none of that feedback might not have been incorporated. I specifically remember requesting that the multi-use trails remain 8 feet as they are right now. And I also requested that some trees be planted. And I don't know if that has come back with that in there. And also I had asked about the 50 acres. I wanted to find out specifically about the acreage. I know we get 50 acres for recreation, but I don't know if that includes the trails, if anything is grandfathered in, if we're already using that acreage for the trails and the parking lot, for instance, or does it start brand new, that we get brand new acreage? I wanted how many acres are we using? How many do we have? And to understand why we can't have our existing 8-foot trails that are there so that there is no user conflicts, because we just talked about the challenging issues that the PAC wanted to work on. And that was the one and only issue that really, was really important that we work on this.
If I could jump in, committee member Dieter, Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails and GIS. Thank you. We did hear all of the comments that we've received from the PAC and from the public and many others. And as well as the regulatory agencies and the biologists and others that we work with at the Habitat Conservancy. We did take a close look at the tree planting question. And again, the historic ecology of the site did not include oak woodlands. And that is of concern to the permitting agencies that this is a restoration project. First and foremost, this is a restoration project. And so achieving the sort of historic ecology goals is paramount. Regarding the trail width, the vast majority of the trails have been included in here at 8 feet. There is a trail that is reduced down to, I believe, 5 feet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie.
We're thinking 6 feet on that one.
6 feet. So there you go, 6 feet. And that there we have received comments that that trail should be perhaps designated for a different use. We've also received comments from our board that they would like us to come back and touch base with them as we further the design. And as we do that. So and also recognizing that we're very early in this project. There's a lot more details that need to be developed to get this to a buildable project. This is a concept design. So things will need to change as we learn and understand the hydrology of the site better, and all of those sorts of features. So we need to be able to maintain some flexibility there. So we did commit to come back to the board at a certain time to discuss trail width and also to discuss permitted uses. The trail conflict issue has continued to come up from certain voices. And we have looked at this as park professionals. Our professional trail planning group has looked at this, and we have looked at the sight lines, the wide open grasslands, really what the potential use is here. We don't see this to be a big mountain biking park where we would see some of the conflict that you'd see other places. And like I say, it would be, wide open and people would have the ability to avoid that. So, so we're very conscious of that 50-foot acre impact that is for new construction. How much can we build? This is, it's very much a ongoing dance and negotiation between us, Abby at the Habitat Conservancy, CDFW, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in terms of just what we can do and how this will all work and how we can benefit the resources. So we do take all those comments very seriously, but we do need to be able to move forward and develop the additional information to actually get this to be a buildable plan, and then of course secure financing for it. So I don't know if that necessarily satisfies your questions, but that's the answer, and that's what we looked at.
So just to clarify on the 50 acres, this is an agreement between the agencies, but it's not an irrevocable contract. If the park district decides, hey, we need a little bit more space, you guys can meet again and.
Yeah, thank you for that. You're right. So we're halfway through our partnership with the Conservancy. We've acquired approximately 15,000 acres. The target's 30,000. We've been in it for 15 years. When this Conservancy, the HCP was developed back in 2005, 2008, none of this land was acquired yet, and there was a whole lot of guesstimates. And I'll just share, it was never in anybody's wildest dreams that we would end up owning the Roddy Ranch Golf Course and converting this. This was proposed for housing at the time. So this was the reason why we're able to move forward with this, is that we were able to get the agencies to agree that, one, this is a golf course, two, it was not necessarily anticipated to become a part of the plan. So it was sort of it's felt sort of extra and additive. That's not to say that they're still not very strict and concerned about just sort of what the use is there, but we've been able to move it forward separate from some of the other projects, basically for that reason. But to your point, yeah, could other things be negotiated? Absolutely. And it's really my hope that we can move this forward and we can demonstrate to the agencies the sort of proof of concept that we can achieve this sort of habitat restoration goals and our public access goals, and that they will see this project as a success. And then when we move forward on, say, Deer Valley or some of the other properties, that we'll have built up a certain level of trust with them that yeah, we can revisit some of those sorts of things.
Okay, one more question, then I promise everyone I will just a follow-up question. So so the 8-foot trails, there's really, I still have not heard why we can't keep the existing 8-foot trails everywhere. It seems like when I say this would be an easy resolution and everyone would be happy, all the parties, all the users, because it'd be plenty of space for everyone. I just think I will remain what I said when it came here last time before us, that I think it's an easy solution if we just stick with what the park district has been doing for multi-use trails.
Well, I'm not sure if any of us want to speak for what everyone wants and what would make everyone happy. I will share, we do hear a lot of requests for wider trails. We do also hear an equal amount of requests, if not more, for narrow trails. We've heard those interests as well. People like the experience of not feeling like they're on a road, like they're on a more naturalized sort of surface trail. And again, wider trails have more impact. So those who are advocating for wider trails are asking us to accept a greater level of environmental impact. And we are trying to minimize that. So we have worked to include the trails as much as we can for accessibility and to minimize trail conflicts, but we also want to provide that more narrow trail experience.
Okay, Member Robinson, please.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Betty. Looking at this and being in East Contra Costa County, it's very exciting to see Roddy Ranch coming along and the developments that are happening there, how it's going to transition from being a golf course that's been a part of the community for decades. I think I've heard about Roddy Ranch for a long time, into an open space that is accessible to the public. And thinking about how public in East Contra Costa County uses the parks. This reminds me a lot of Contra Loma and how it's kind of that circular trail. And thinking about the users that I tend to see at Contra Loma, I don't see a lot of bicycles. Maybe when this is a connector, which I'm really excited to hear this will connect to the surrounding parks and provide access. But maybe at that point you might see usage increase, but typically on something where it's just kind of loops where you're going around, I don't see a lot of bicycles or bicyclists interested in that long-term and just as their destination that they want to go to. So we might have less conflict here than we're expecting at this point, just because I think they'd be bored going in circles for that long. And with the open sight lines and the fact that this is a grassland, it would be easy to see them coming and for them to see people coming as well. It would be great to have more trees, but I understand why, because this is not the environment for them. Just thinking long-term that as things get hotter and hotter here each summer, just thinking about the 115-degree plus days that we had here. Shade is really important. Water is important. So hopefully they have some way for people to access water out there. But overall, I think this is a good plan to provide access and opportunities for the surrounding communities, because you have just up the street from there, you have thousands of houses. And this will be a great place for them to get access during the day, to get outdoors and get exercise. So, and especially with if there can be an Empire Mine Road connector, because that is a trail that people use from those communities, that housing development at the end, they can access it without having to go down Deer Valley. So something to keep in mind there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if there's any additional hands raised, any additional feedback, because we do have an item, and I'm going to open this quickly to see if there's a member of the public. Any public comment on this, as I don't see any additional PAC member hands raised. I see somebody, Scott's iPhone So you'll have 3 minutes, followed by Jim Hansen. And before anybody starts, so I do have to jump off so I can go to a Concord City Council meeting. So I'm going to be turning over the chairing of this meeting to our Vice Chair, Neil Tsutsui. So go ahead, Scott, and please begin your 3-minute public.
Thank you very much, Chairman Obringer. Hello, I'm Scott Bartlebaugh, Advocacy Director for the Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay. I thank the committee and staff for the opportunity and submit this comment on behalf of the hundreds of BTC EB members and thousands of cyclists in the East Bay seeking trail experiences. The Rowdy Ranch preferred option is a reasonable compromise given the broad and diverse desires of the various stakeholders. It provides a compatible restoration and recreation plan. It provides nominal hiking, trail running, horseback riding, dog walking, and biking access that the district has been promising in land bank properties and new trail construction. There are several items to consider. The majority of the trails are 8-foot road width as a means to deal with the trail culture, including a contingent that struggles to share trails. With trails consume 4 or more times the acre compared to rapidly consume recreation opportunity under the acre CP. Equally important, they detract from a more experienced landscape.
God, I'm so sorry. We're not all of the words. It's there's something wrong with the microphone. It's you're almost sounding like a robot.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Okay, let's try this. The majority of the trails are 8-foot road width as a means to deal with the trail culture, including a contingent that struggles to share trails. Road width trails consume 4 or more times the acreage compared to single track and rapidly consume the limited recreation opportunities under the 50-acre HCP limit. Equally important, they detract from a more intimate experience with the landscape. The 1,000+ miles of road width experiences in the district are enough, and we don't need to build new ones as trails. We need more single track experiences for hiking, biking, trail running, dog walking, and horseback riding. Narrower trails provide a greater recreational opportunity throughout the entire HCP area, maintaining the same overall footprint. I asked the PAC members to be informed on the 50-acre recreation limit in the HCP if you are not already. The proposed trails are to be purposely designed for multi-use, including bikes, to provide ample sight lines through open grasslands with speed limiting features. These are not existing trails that weren't designed for multi-use. The gentle slopes and intentional grading will provide safe opportunities to step to the side to allow passing. Existing mowing practices afford this space even on narrow trails. The trail plan still doesn't provide for the first bike-only trail in the district. We're still asking. The continued call to exclude bikes from any of these trails is one of intolerance, entitlement, and a not on my trail attitude. This is not a trail system that will invite downhill racing. It is a system with purposeful modern design, moderate grades that invites families with young children to ride. Hikers have 150 miles of bike-free access on 75% of the narrow trails in the district and have experienced this for over 4 decades just 10 minutes away at Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve. Bikes have no narrow trail access at Black Diamond. Inclusion of bikes on the Rowdy system as proposed is very reasonable and a start to equitable access. If there's any exclusion of bikes from trails in this system, we ask for an equitable amount of bike-only access. I urge you to support this high-quality proposal staff have prepared through a very public process and consider those points as you make recommendations. Mountain bikers are constituents as well. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you for that comment. And before we move on to the next public comment, I just want to remind PAC members that there are also some other public comments that were included in the meeting materials that were distributed by email. I see the next member of the public is Jim Hansen. 3 minutes, please.
Great, thank you. This is Jim Hansen with the California Native Plant Society East Bay chapter. And thank you for the opportunity to comment. I hope you had a chance to look at the materials we sent out Friday. that includes both a letter and a PowerPoint that includes some illustrations on some ideas. We're really happy to see this plan come forward. And in looking at the preferred alternative, what also became evident is how are we doing our best, or can we do something new to address this trail conflict issue? Now, the thing with multi-use trails, and I just have to say that Roddy is unique because it's a blank slate. A lot of the property, as I understand, I've heard from staff, will be regraded. And as Mr. Willis said, the existing concrete trails will be pulled out. So what happens when we're on the trail? And again, this is looking at how to resolve this situation where a family or somebody with a dog or whatever is walking on a narrow trail. And whether it's a grassland or a steep slope, somebody's got to figure out quickly to negotiate how to jump out of the way. Sometimes a bicyclist is stopping. Oftentimes the hiker or walker will move off the trail. There are slopes there. So as many of you know from probably walking the site on a tour, there are slopes that have to be that it's not just all flat ground. So the proposal here is this is a good plan. The concept is good. What we're suggesting is that we look at adding a 5-foot mowed strip on the side so that a bike and a horse can pass, and that a family walking down the trail can simply stay on this trail. So that's one. Number two, with regard to trees, and I'll mention this quickly, it's true that there are limitations on trees there, but we would ask that the PAC ask that they be included to the maximum extent possible. There is a road out there called Lone Tree Way, and there's a reason for that. Plus, there's an altitude in the higher sections of the park that should be looked at as supporting oaks. And just lastly, there is a split in the trail at the beginning. We recommending a minor designation, I guess these will come in the details later, of a nature trail, walking only trail for seniors and families. It's a small segment and it provides some serenity in just walking that trail. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for those comments. Are there any other members of the public who have comments that they would like to add? Okay, with that, I'm going to close public comments. And this is a recommendation item from the PAC, so I'll entertain any motions from the membership.
I'll make the motion that we accept. And this is Elisa, by the way.
So I hear the motion from Member Robinson to
Second, Simmons. Oh, sorry.
Okay, second Simmons, I see. Irene, did you have a comment to add?
Yeah, I realize that there is a motion and a second on the floor, but I just wanted to add to the discussion that, and perhaps even an alternative motion, that I would move that we accept the plan as presented with a couple amendments, which would be to include trees to the extent possible, and to widen the trails also to the extent possible, so that there's no user conflict. And what was one other thing? I forget what the other thing was. Okay, well, anyway, that's my alternative motion.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second on the floor already. And so we should I'm not sure if we can entertain two motions at the same time.
Neil?
I think we can continue with discussion. Yes, Bob?
I think the proper process, and Eric may confirm this, is that literally what I think Member Dieter is doing is requesting that the maker of the motion and the second of the motion consent to an amendment of the motion. And if not, you have to vote on the original motion.
Okay. All right. So that's Member Robinson and Member Simmons made the original motion and second, correct?
Correct.
So would you like
yeah.
Do you want to discuss that now, or do you want to
Um,
public comment?
Whenever we don't support the amendments, what's the process for that if we don't support the new amendments to the motion?
Well, I think then we just vote on the original motion and second.
All right, I would say I would prefer to stick with the original motion as is. I trust the park planning process, and I understand that this area, while surrounding higher elevations, have oak trees and oak woodlands. This is more of a grassland, from my understanding, from what's been reported to us from the planning department. So I would stick with the original motion of moving the plan forward.
I concur.
Okay, Madam Secretary, could you take the vote, please?
Absolutely, Chair. Member Arce?
Yes.
Arce, yes. Member Carey?
Yes.
Carey, yes. Member Chang?
Can you skip me, please?
Yes. Member Chang, skip, and we can come back. Member Claxton?
Yes.
Claxton, aye. Thank you. Member Corkin, not present. Member Deschambeau? Deschambeau, not present, I believe. Member Dieter?
No.
Dieter, no. Member Espana?
Aye.
Espana, aye. Member Lacy?
Aye.
Lacy, aye. Member Mahadevan, not present. Member Nason? Member Nason, not present. Member Rickard?
Aye.
Rickard, aye. Member Robinson?
Aye.
Robinson, aye. Member San Wong?
Yes.
San Wong, aye. Member Simmons?
Aye.
Simmons, aye. Member Skardoff? Skardoff, not present, I believe. Member Williams? Not present, I believe. Chair Obringer, not present. Chair Tsatsui?
Aye.
Tsatsui, aye. And Member Chang?
Yes, thank you.
Chang, aye. That makes for 11 ayes. Motion passes.
Great, thank you everyone for that. So now we'll move on to our next item of business, which is staff comments. Eric?
No additional comments, thank you.
Great, thank you, Eric.
Actually, you know what, I'm sorry. Flora may have a comment about the PAC field trip upcoming.
Yes, I can share some details. We are asking folks to save the date of October 1st, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. This will be a site visit that includes lunch. We will send around a calendar invitation and request that folks RSVP. This will also be publicly noticed. Members of the Park District staff and board members will be invited to attend. And we will be visiting the future site of the Visitor Center at Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, home of the Port Chicago 50 in Concord, as well as the regional park site, both of which are very near each other in Concord. We will send that information around to members shortly, and we'd love to have you there.
Yeah, that'll be lots of fun. So hope to see everybody there. Thank you for that, Madam Secretary. Any other comments from the staff? No, moving on, then comments from members of the PAC. No. Seeing none, then moving on to report from the chair. I have nothing to report. So then board committee reports. Did we have any meetings of board committees since our last meeting? No, seeing none. Moving on to old business, I believe there is none. New business, I believe there is none. And so I will adjourn this meeting at 6:17 p.m. Thank you all for sticking around. See you soon.